Welcome back, everybody, to the Spud
and Sweet Potato podcast.
I like to call it a life cast.
We're so glad you decided to join us again.
And we have a very special episode for you today. We have our daughter, Victoria, with us. And so it's going to be a little bit different than normal because it won't be Spud and Sweet Potato, but Sweet Potato and Peaches.
Oh, yeah.
We always have all these fruit
nicknames.
and vegetable names for everybody.
Can you tell we like to eat?
I guess we like to eat. So we are going to turn this around, and we're going to bring Victoria in, and my wife, Virginia Faith, Sweet Potato, is going to interview Victoria.
Hey, Tori, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
I'm sure about that. I don't think so. She is here under duress, but we're just very glad she's here. So we're so glad to have you guys here this week. They came all the way from West Virginia to join us for Easter and a few days later. So Victoria, who's affectionately called Tori now, she is our third child, and she was born in Marysville, Ohio when we were there. And we are very glad that you're here. And do you want to tell us a little bit about, do you want me to tell a little bit first, or do you want to talk a little bit first about growing up? Okay, so Tori was born in Marysville, Ohio, and we moved to West Virginia when you were, let me think, when you were about just like a couple months old. Because that was September and you were born, so yeah, 3 months, less than 3 months old. We moved to West Virginia, and then we were there for a little over a year. I think that was, I'm getting my dates. I'm forgetting my dates. Anyway, then we moved to Canada, and that is, all your memories are in Canada. Like, you have no memory anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And then we started our church, Beacon Baptist Church, in 2004, and you were just had turned 2. And so at the accident, Tori was just learning to walk when the accident happened, and when I got out of the hospital, she was running. So it was like just in that period of your development that the accident happened. And then, so we started the church in 2004, and then we moved away back to the States in 2019. So you would have been just turned 17, about to go into your senior year. So tell us a little bit about that and how that affected you, how you felt, and maybe some things that we did that were very helpful, maybe some things that you did that were helpful, maybe some things giving advice to somebody else, how maybe some suggestions of things that maybe we didn't think of that could have made that transition. Because that's a super hard time in your life to be moving. Like, you've lived somewhere all your life, and then to go to a new country, a new church, a new school for your senior year. Can you tell us a little bit how that felt? And
Right. Well, it was definitely, I would consider it, I don't know, the best word maybe like uprooting, Mm-hmm. You have so many roots, when growing up, in the same place your whole life. But I think it was good. I think it was really good for me. I mean, of course, clearly, where I'm at now, still living there,
The same town, yeah.
It's been the best thing ever. But at first it didn't, of course, feel like that, friends, job, I had a job, all the plans, all my life goals were, focused on being there,
Right.
But I don't know necessarily advice, but, it's trying to remember back,
Right.
all that.
Right.
That's been
What are some things that we were talking earlier, what are some things that were helpful in like your room and that kind of things that...
Right. Yeah. I know one thing, being 17, leaving a room I've had forever,
Mm-hmm.
like a home that I loved, leaving your home,
Right.
So it was nice. You kind of let me do my own thing, design it and do it. It was kind of nice to take, I like doing home improvement, clearly,
Yes.
Since then, done a lot of more home improvement things, but, always being around Dad and you, we were always, getting things, that weren't necessarily everybody would want, but
Right.
making it what we wanted.
Yes.
So that was something nice that y'all, kind of let me do. So that was a blessing.
So how did it feel going from a little Christian school where your mom was the teacher to a school of over 100 where you actually, you went from class to class? Right. And how was that transition? Like, how
the one
completely different.
One big thing I remember was everything was so huge. Like I remember the first time going into that church and like having like hallways and all these rooms. I had no idea. Now I'm like, okay, I've I've been in all of those rooms, and so it doesn't seem as big anymore. But I just remember being like, oh my goodness, this is huge.
Going from a church of just over 100 to 500. That's
right. Yeah, it was a big adjustment, and just like the school style too. I wasn't.
Yes.
It ended up being okay, but
it was a challenge.
It was, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so then you graduated from high school, and then tell me a little bit about
so after I graduated,
your life.
I was gonna go to college right away, but the church offered me, that teacher's aide position and custodial work and all that. So I decided to stay there I was just gonna stay there for a semester.
Yes.
But because being a substitute teacher, you kind of want to stay the whole school year.
Yes.
So I ended up staying there that whole year, which ended up being great because I'd already met my husband, Daniel, but
I have to tell that story a little bit.
Sure.
Okay, so our son-in-law, Daniel, he's just over behind the camera. His mom and dad were the very first ones to invite us over to their house after we moved to West Virginia. And I knew that they had a daughter, but somehow in our conversations, I didn't even know they had a son. So we were sitting there, and that was when you guys lived on Compassion. And that little peninsula that came out, and his mom was setting up all taco fixings and everything and so all of a sudden we're just sitting. I think Hannah had a really bad headache that day. I remember little bits and pieces, and like there's really loud engine noise coming the driveway, and Jessica was like, I said, what was that? And she said, oh, that's Daniel. I'm like, who's Daniel? And she said, he's our son. And I was like, oh, I must have missed somehow. I didn't know you had a son. Well, he walked in the door, and I don't remember if you probably had shorts on, but you had a t-shirt on that said something about a funny thing about what gun control actually is. It's like,
buying one gun instead of three or something.
Yeah, like gun control is buying one gun instead of three guns or something like that. Anyway, he walked in the door, and I was like, oh my goodness, he seems like such a nice guy. And then we were talking about Patch the Pirate, and I couldn't remember the words. I couldn't remember the words to the taco song. And they both were singing it, and I was like, oh, they would be perfect for each other. So that was September of 2019.
Right.
And then you didn't graduate until May of 2020. Right. COVID, that whole thing.
Yeah.
You were a COVID graduate. And you had all the, they did the toilet paper rolls for the 2000 t-shirt. Yep. Anyway, okay, so that was the first time you met him. And I don't think, like, it wasn't like love at first sight. You just knew he existed.
Yeah, no.
And so,
sorry, that sounded awful.
It wasn't though. Like you knew, like Daniel knew she existed, and you knew he existed. That was about it. Okay, so then you graduate from high school, and you're working. Okay, so then talk about how you met him.
Right. So
I mean, like not met him, but like in a
Well, a big thing was he helped Dad a lot. Because, Dad was always doing stuff for the bus ministry.
Working on the buses.
I mean, all of his, I don't want to say crazy, but like, crazy, like big,
exciting,
like crazy.
Yes,
like,
yes.
All these awesome ideas to, get the kids interested in all this kind of stuff, and all of his programs and all those amazing things he was doing. And so, Daniel,
he's always happy to help.
Now we know how amazing he is.
Yes,
but,
yes.
he
was actually friends with Dad first before you guys even got interested in each other.
And he was always, he kind of helped Dad. I mean, Dad could do it, but, he kind of helped him put his plan, into fruition. That's a weird word. But anyway, but he would help, do that. And so I remember he had friended me on Facebook, which, as a teen girl, you're like, oh my goodness.
Now, was that Christmas of 2019 or 2020?
2019.
That he sent you the little teddy bear.
Like a first, just like a Merry Christmas thing. And
but that was 2019.
That
was Christmas of 2019. So that was only 3 months.
Right. So, just like little things like that, nothing, just being nice,
being friends.
And our families hung out, there was nothing like that. But
you guys hardly ever spoke a word to each other.
Yeah, because.
You just.
I mean, that's the thing, he he has his goals, you know.
Right.
And if anybody knows him, he works so hard for his goals, and getting married was not one of his goals. You know, that was not something that he saw himself doing. So he was not interested, and I was not really interested, you know, because I had my goals, you know, I was planning on leaving.
Right.
So, it wasn't like, you know, we were both, you know, in opposite directions really. And, anyway, so since, you know, graduating, they offered me the job, I needed my own car. And so, of course, my dad
I forgot
recommends me.
about that. Yeah, that was
So
neat.
I was recommended to, you know, talk to him. We had already, you know, been, you know, talking a little bit. And so that was when we really got to talking, you know, all about a
Your
vehicle,
car,
you know, and that's something that I needed and totally up his alley, you know. And so he's so helpful, you know, he's so helpful to so many people. So, yeah, that's how we really got, you know, talking to each other and more comfortable. Got my car and everything, and you know, it just from talking to him about that, we just kind of, you know, never stopped talking, you know, even after I got the car. So anyway, I remember in October, so that was, you know, probably July, and then October he had asked to meet me at the pavilion after I was done work. And so, you know, I'd already known that he had talked to Dad before, so I was already nervous, you know, doing my hair again, changing after looking perfectly fine, you know, all nervous. And so I go and meet him there, and it's kind of like a joke now, now that, like, we know each other so well and everything, that he brought me a gun. You know, this totally not country girl from Canada. He brought me a lovely gun, which, you know,
it was very
now,
cool.
You know, knowing him is such a good gift from him. You know, like that's his thing. But anyway, he brought me a gun and asked me if I wanted to go, I guess, on a date or whatever. I don't know.
Now, was it? Would you like to go on a date with me?
No. No, but it was really
would you
sweet.
like to go on a date with me?
Yeah. So October, like the middle of October, was our first date, and then we spent every
so
possible
much
minute,
time.
like you know, every possible waking minute together. And then it was on his way to his family's Thanksgiving, where you know, he was just talking. And if you know anything about Daniel, you know, once he has something in his head that he's going to do it, he doesn't want to waste time. I mean,
If he knows, he knows.
You know, you know this. Like,
yes.
Out the door, you know. Hey, I mentioned to him the other day. Hey, I want to build a greenhouse. The next morning, before I'd gotten up with the baby, he was out there with all of the, you know,
he was building a greenhouse.
And he was building it. Like, he's amazing.
You were thinking a year, maybe a few months at least.
Yeah. So anyway, he was talking to me. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm looking at, you know, buying a house, you know, for me right now and, you know, for us eventually. And, you know, for me, I'm like, we've been dating for like a little over a month. I'm like, this is kind of crazy. You know, he just goes and says, you know, because I love you. And that was the first time he had said that. And I was like, oh, I love you too. And, you know.
You have to tell the rest of that.
I know. I was like, I hope I must, you know, saying that in truth, you know. You know? Anyway, but then we drive a little bit further, you know, we're heading to his parents, and I was like kind of thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, you know, it's kind of awkward because we're not really talking anymore, and I was like, so does this mean I'm your girlfriend? And he's like, well, yeah, and you know, in his mind, after the first date, I was his girlfriend, like, you know,
because he had no doubts, like he just knew, right.
So anyway, then around Christmas time, you know, I guess he talked to Dad already.
I'm sure.
Yeah, he had like a meeting with him or something. And asked his permission.
An actual meeting, yes.
Yeah, like we had gone and like looked at rings and stuff, but like I don't know why in my head I thought, you know, a promise ring, you know, because that's a normal thing. Like, you know, a lot of people will do that, you know, like I promise, you know, whatever. And I don't know why my brain was just thinking that.
Yes.
And anyway, so then it was New Year's Eve. 2020, I guess that was, he proposed. So, anyway, that was a kind of a surprise, definitely a surprise, but
and everything went against his plans. Like the weather didn't cooperate. He had so many plans, like of scenarios, and we tried to figure it out, and then the weather didn't cooperate, and this is because it was new, you know. New
but it was great, and then that next June, we got married, June 26th. That's right. So. And
then you taught that year. Did you teach at MCA or what?
So I was a teacher's aide, and then I kind of helped with the pre-K 3 because there was a lot of things
for 2 years,
but,
right?
No, just that one year.
The 1 year.
And then after we got married, I just substitute So I was
Okay,
a substitute
okay.
teacher, and then I still did the cleaning.
And then the next year you taught full time at Faith.
At Faith. So yeah, then we
Right.
had them move to Faith. And I was, so then I became the teacher's aide there for 2 years. And then last year I was their, supervisor. So like their main teacher. That was great. I loved that. I loved teaching. And then of course this year I have all of.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are right now. I mean, about your family, and it's amazing.
Yeah, God
miraculous.
God has been so, so good. So of course, we got married in June of 2021, and, we were just loving life, being newly married for that, time. And, shortly after we're like, okay, let's start a family,
Yes.
that's what you do. You get married, you start a family. And so, we were like, okay, nobody thinks, you're going to have,
It's going to be a struggle.
you think get married, have kids, it's easy,
it's
but that's not the way it is, for everybody. And that's kind of how it was for us. So it was about, we've been married for almost 5 years now. So, that just shows how long of a, process it was.
Yes.
And there were lots of, struggles and lots of things that we went through
Heartbreak.
before we got where we got. But
When did you start the process that got to you to where you are now?
Right. So, okay.
I don't even remember that.
I'll just say, like, we went other routes, and then probably, I think, when was it? October of 23? No, 2024, October.
Right, because this is 26. Yes.
We, made our first application, I guess you'd say, to adopt a child.
I know.
And it's a long process. Anybody who's gone through that before will know how much you have to do.
So many
lots
classes
of
and
classes,
home inspections
things like that. And so we wanted it on the fast track. We hadn't given up on having children and
Right.
stuff. And so, but I was like, well, let's just start it now. And
since it is
'cause I don't
generally such
wanna-
a long...
right. And because I was like, well, I don't want to start it in a year and wish we were already
And then what
open,
if it takes
an
a year or
open
two to
family.
have a child? Right.
Right. So we're like, well, let's just, we don't have to accept something right away,
Right.
If we're not ready. So we kind of just started that process, and God worked it out so great.
You were constantly taking classes. It was like
all the
every
time.
week.
Right.
There
yeah.
was a class at least. I
Right.
mean, you did not, I don't think you ever let a class pass you before, like,
No.
you never
No.
skipped a
We
class.
did everything
like you
we
did
could,
every
yeah.
single class.
Yeah, that was our main, my main focus. I was like,
Yes.
because I was kind of the plan. I am very much a planner. Like I like my lists. I'm very organized as much as I can be, and I like to plan things out. So I was the planner. I wanted to make sure everything was done as fast as it could be done, and so it was March 20th of 2025 that we were. They call it open.
Officially
an open
done,
family. You're
yes.
able. You've done everything you needed to do.
Don't you remember us talking and you're like, it's taking so long,
Yeah.
and then you look back on it and you're like, oh my goodness, that was hardly any time at all.
Right.
But I mean, when you're waiting for that phone call, like every single, it probably, whether it was me or your mother-in-law or anybody,
Yeah.
when anybody times the phone rang, I'm sure you were like, oh,
Well, yeah, because that was during the school year, and so I would
teaching,
be
you're right.
busy. My
Yes.
phone's not on me, and I just remember like anytime, like because I would have my phone on the desk and I could hear it. Like I'd
Yes.
be like helping a student. And I'd hear it. I'm like, okay, just a second. And then
I have to
sometimes I'd
check
be like,
every phone call.
Ask my teacher's aide to be like, okay, can you take this? I gotta go outside. And anyway, so a couple calls. Not the right fit. There was one situation where we thought it was a good fit, but God closed that door. Praise the Lord. And looking
Right.
back on it now.
Yes.
And then it
But
was
yet another heartbreak. I mean, you were expecting
Yeah,
it, and
right.
but again, God,
Right.
totally
I
God.
can look back at it.
Oh
now,
my goodness,
like,
I just can't even imagine.
right, for sure.
Knowing what we know now.
Right. And I'm just so thankful, like looking back, through it, I remember just being like, oh, it's just so hard. But I'm so glad looking back at it now, how much I can
Yes.
say, wow, like how much God was able to grow me, in that time.
That's such a hard time when you don't know and you just have to trust.
Right.
And you have to be, okay, I mean, just within the last week, just different things,
Right,
how God you're just like, oh Lord, please, please. You're so worried and so concerned, and you just have to trust that God is going to
because you want God's will, but then at the same time you're scared that God's will isn't what you want.
Yes.
But anyway, so then it was June, at the beginning of June, Daniel was actually out at a church outdoorsman camp with our church. And so he's, 12 hours away in Indiana. And so I get this call and they say,
you got the call.
That there's, 3.
A sibling set of 3.
And so,
that was a Wednesday?
Yeah, and so it's kind of a funny story because they kept calling us for like these crazy situations. And we're like, because at the beginning you're like, okay, what can you handle kind of, and, we had said 2, at the most. And because we had 2 kids' rooms, in my mind, I was like, that's what we can handle 2, at the most. And, we were hoping, I was like, oh, I just want 1, like just 1, and.
You never wanted twins. Do you remember? You never wanted twins.
Well, twins is different. I know. Those are babies.
That's true.
But anyway, they said, we have a little boy, he's 3, a little girl, 2, and then a 10-month-old baby girl. And so that's all I knew. We didn't know names. We didn't know anything about them. And so I was like, okay, well, I have to talk to my husband. So I'm calling him and, he's out in the middle of a field, somewhere, and he doesn't have signal. So I'm like trying, and he's breaking up. And anyway, it was a whole crazy situation, but we ended up agreeing to say yes, which, was kind of crazy. Like, that was of the Lord. Like, to say yes to that was not our plan.
Right.
And so, so I call her back. I'm like, yes. And then, so she gave me the number of the home that they were in. And, that was really helpful because we got a lot of information, a lot of things that we were able to know. And they were like, okay, well, when can you, take them? They call it placement, but basically, when can you take them? And I was like, well, my husband gets home Saturday morning. They're like, well, what about Saturday, like afternoon? So he gets home or whenever he got home. Maybe it was late Friday night. But he got home and, of course I'm ordering beds and things, and, I had prepared because we had some kids just stay with, they call it respite, but it's basically you babysit, for them, and it's nice for other families to know, they're a certified
I forgot all about
person.
that. I had forgotten about that.
So we had done that. So we had a little room set up with just a toddler bed, and then I had a crib, just in case. And so I was like ordering beds and bedding and trying to make it, as homey as I could. And so, it was June 7th that they were, that they showed up. And so, it was hard at first, because, you get
0 to 3.
Instant family, and it's not just, you're not just having triplets, that's hard. That's a different kind of hard, the late nights and 3 babies, but it's, there's a lot of things that come with it that, everybody's a little bit scared or a lot scared.
Yes.
And so, but, anyway, so now we have, that was Isaac, Ruby, and Bella. So that's how we were able to have them. So it's just been amazing to see them grow, especially in the knowledge of God, and how much Isaac, I don't think I know another 4-year-old boy who loves God as much as he does and
knows his books of the Bible and scripture and songs.
And he's a genius.
He's so smart. He is really smart.
Everybody who knows him knows he's ridiculously smart. And just Ruby, how she just completely come out of her shell and how, she wasn't even talking and she was so, had her walls up and just how kind and sweet she is. And then Bella is a firecracker. She's a little intense.
Very passionate.
Yes. But she is like,
she's a sweetie tie too.
I mean, out of all of them, she knows how to make you laugh. And she's the sweetest thing ever.
You can't imagine your life without them.
Right. And you think back and you're like, this is what this is what I want, I want to have a baby, I want to have a baby. And now I'm like, man, thank you, Lord, because this was so much better. Like, I can't imagine if we hadn't done it at the time we did it, or like, Lord, just, like God has just worked it out so much. So anyway, but
this is going to be your very first Mother's Day.
Yes. Yeah.
Very excited.
Right. So, and then everything with them is working out great. So we're in the process right now, just finalization, just, a month or 2, and it'll be all finalized for those 3.
God, it's so good.
And then, anyway, you have to do with kids that you have in your home, some kids, if you're fostering, they have lots of court dates and stuff, and you're that's when you're trying to do reunification. But with adoption, they know the plan is for them to stay with you. So they just have, like review hearings. So it's every 3 months. It's good because then, kids don't fall through the cracks. And so of course it's about 5 hours away from us where they're from. And so their court is also 5 hours away still. So, and you
guys have never missed a court date.
Daniel,
they always say you don't have to be there, and you go every time.
Yeah, we go every time because it matters.
It's important. It's so important.
And it is a big deal too. I know if anybody else is going through the process of that,
don't miss.
Show up because it's proven to us that it does. It
makes a
does
difference.
matter. It matters.
Really does make a difference.
And it shows you care. Anyway, but we would go to court, and at one of the review courts about the kids, they were just talking like, hey, making sure like, you all want to adopt him? And you're like, yes. And they were like, okay, well, we're behind you, and this is great. We were just waiting because for the appeal to go through, and that's all good now and everything. But that's kind of what we were waiting on. But they would just be like, okay, everything's still good. And one of them, they said, hey, there's going to be another baby, a full biological sibling. And we didn't know when or anything. They just said, there's going to be another one. And
it's likely they'll have to remove that.
Right. And they said, because of everything, they're not going to be in really, a bad situation, and so anyway, basically they said, we'd like to keep with their sibling. Like, and they pose it to us as, you would be the first choice for this baby, but it's not going to affect your other kids if you decide if you don't want to, and so we talked and prayed about it a lot. And, we at first, kind of decided like, oh, we're good with what we have, and because Bella was still really little, and we didn't know how far along this pregnancy was, and it was kind of a scary thought. We didn't really know, and so, for a couple months, because it's only every 3 months, that they have those review hearings. So we had 3 months to kind of talk about it and mull it over, I guess. And so we talked about it. We kind of decided, oh, it's probably not a good idea, And then I don't know if you want me to go into detail about this, but
it's up to you.
Anyway, I was sitting in Sunday school, and there was a man preaching, and he said the verse. I'm gonna totally, not say this properly, but it was about how Jesus was back in his hometown, and they were all almost like making fun of him, like, who is this guy? We've known him, we've grown up with him, we know his siblings, and basically the verse is, paraphrasing of course, but it's like, and he did not do many miracles there because of their unbelief. And so it just kind of slapped me in the face, and I was like, what if this is the best thing for our family? What if this is an amazing, like, this is just going to be so great, and I'm not going to allow it because I don't believe that I can handle it, And I don't think you should be just crazy, oh, we're going to have 10 kids because,
yes.
we got to believe,
Right.
No, but I truly was like, oh man, like, it kind of slapped me in the face, like, and like, you think about their salvation,
Yes.
like, you can even, blah, blah, blah. You can think to yourself like, oh, they're going to have a good home that loves them, but you can't guarantee a Christian home,
right?
And I just couldn't imagine later on down the road being like, oh, well, you have a sibling, but we didn't think we could handle it, and like telling them that, like, I couldn't.
The Lord didn't let you think. The Lord stirred your heart.
I just couldn't not want this child.
Yes.
And, I love kids, and I've always wanted a big family. So I couldn't say no. And so, of course, it wasn't my just decision alone. So I kind of reopened the subject, and, it was kind of like, oh, wait, if we thought this was a no, but, and I just kind of said, I was like, I really can't say no to this. Yes. Like, but of course I was like, I don't want this to just be a me decision. I don't want to do this unless we're on the same page. And so, clearly, we were on the same page, and we said yes. And it's been one of the best decisions ever. But anyway,
little baby boy is almost 3 months old.
Yeah. So, it was kind of a crazy story how he came to be with us. We're waiting. They told us back in July. So I'm like, I'm like the planner. I'm like
counting the months.
Literally, I'm
okay,
like, so I'm
we
like,
know how Bella is.
I'm like trying to, figure out okay, this is my range of time where this baby could be born. And so I knew, I was like, if I didn't get a call by March, then it's not something happened, and we're not going to have a baby. And So it was around Christmas time. I had talked to our worker and I was like, hey, can we just like put on the record? Because we hadn't really told, like we had told our worker that yes, we do want this baby, but then we got a new worker and, you know, I wasn't sure.
It was
I wanted to make sure
that
the person who needed to know knew, yes, we are,
they have
please let us.
and they have a placement for this baby.
Right. And so I had told him around Christmas, right before Christmas, and I figured he told the person, all that kind of stuff. Well, January 13th, I checked in with him and I was like, hey,
have you,
did you contact them? They're like, oh no, it's in my drafts. I'm like, oh, okay, can you please,
today,
send the email. And 2 hours later, he emailed me and then called me. And he's like, hey, you need to check your email. And he was getting another call from the department and he had to go. And I checked my email and it said, hey, I just, told, it's called a GAL. I just, contacted the GAL and she said the child was born today or yesterday and they want to place it today. And I'm just like blown away. Like I thought he was like, I had no idea. And just the way God worked that out.
The timing.
Like
if you had not reminded him,
I don't know how
things
it could have turned out. And so I'm, of course, like literally shaking, like, all these, feelings. And so I'm like calling Daniel and I'm like, hey, you might want to get off work because, they want to place the baby tonight. And, of course he's asking, well, what gender is it? And we're all excited because, in our minds, we were hoping for a boy because, we have a boy and 2 girls. We were just, we wouldn't have cared.
No,
but, and
course.
just, how our house is set up, our rooms upstairs are kind of small. So we already had 2 girls in a room. It would have just for the logistics, it would have been so nice to have a boy. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try to find out, and, so many people in the works of this whole thing. Mm-hmm. So, calls and emails and it's kind of a crazy time and trying to tell, you and, Daniel's mom and all this kind of stuff. So, calls and hang up and okay, someone else is calling me, and all this craziness. But, the worker called me and she was at the hospital. I was like, oh, like, do we know the gender? And she's like, the child is male. And so we were so excited. And,
that's when I burst into tears.
Yeah,
when you
so
told
we were
me that.
so excited. And we wouldn't have cared, but
it wouldn't have mattered.
It's just extra special that it was,
yes.
2 boys, 2 girls. It's so exciting.
So what are some things, just a couple real quick because we're going late.
Right.
What are some things that you like to do with your kids now that you did?
So life now, 4 kids, 4 and under.
Since June. Since June.
Yes. But we're all, I don't feel like it's just been, everyone's always like
forever.
Man, you were thrown into this. And, you
guys are doing such a great
around,
job.
but I don't feel like I've only been a mom for a year.
It doesn't feel
I feel
like
like I've had them forever. Like
yes.
we fit so well. Mm-hmm. And
and you love them so well.
I feel like it's just comfortable. Like,
and they love you so much.
It's just, we're mom and dad. Like, it's not, it doesn't feel new. It feels like we've known each other forever. Like, I don't feel any different, as if I would have birthed them myself.
Yes.
But we do a lot of things, I homeschool Isaac, we're doing kindergarten with him and we have a home with lots of acreage. So, growing up, we kind of grew up a little bit on the farm, lots of animals. Yes. Dad would do the garden, you would do canning. So I kind of I do it all. I have gardens and chickens and animals and I love canning, call my kind of like a homesteader, but not really. Mm-hmm. But, homeschool mom, homesteading.
Just the difference of this 17-year-old girl,
right,
moving from the only home she ever had,
right,
and all of the trepidation, maybe a little bit of excitement, and of just an adventure, whatever it might be, and how God just in these last, almost 7 years,
right, and then
how God has just worked.
You think
in your
about
life. It's amazing.
Moving to a new country, and then it was only 2 years that you all were here, and then
we
you
left.
Guys all left, and I was just newly married,
right.
So going through you guys leaving, and then all of that with infertility and stuff like that.
That's a lot.
So you think back to that time and how I was like, man, it just seemed like things in life were doing great, but just things like that, it was just like,
and you were so young.
Why is this God's plan?
Right.
Why was it God's plan to move me from, what I thought was, my plan was
forever
changing
home.
So much, with God's plan. And so, it would never have been my plan for you guys to have moved away.
Right.
I always thought growing up, I would have been doing the same thing I'm doing right now.
Just together.
But together,
Yes.
and back then I wasn't doing, what I wanted to do.
Yes.
And, what I thought I wanted to do. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to homeschool my kids. I wanted to have a big garden with things. And so
Lord.
looking back thinking, man, I thought my life was just not going as I planned, and that was, I think, one of my biggest thoughts. I'm like, man, this is just not how I planned it. This is not what I thought was going to happen.
Yes.
And now looking back, like literally just in the span of exactly a year, like if you would have told me a year ago today that I was living the dream, I would have believed you because God is so good, but
yes.
I would have, been shocked to have just heard how much God has blessed me. And like I was going to say, I didn't think that was a good plan, and just like how much I would not change anything. Like looking back, I'm thankful for that time I had, even though I wasn't happy. I was happy, but I wasn't happy. And
it's almost like disappointed. Like, wait, this isn't my plan.
Right. And like I was happy day to day, but it was just like, an overwhelm, like, and it just really taught me, like I didn't think I had what I wanted, but I had God. And, like I kept telling him, like, that was a big thing. I'm like, I just want you to be enough.
Yes.
Like, I was so happy with my husband, but like, it just was, like I said, it wasn't my plan. I had planned to be somewhere else at that moment, And so I was so happy, and I'm so thankful. Like I said, I'm so thankful for that time, but it was just a big thing for me. I need to make sure that God is enough for me. 'Cause,
and that applies to every single person on the face of the planet, that God needs to be enough.
Right. And
because he is enough. He is enough.
And I think
whether
I
we
did
realize
get
that
to
or
that
not.
point where I'm like, no, God is enough. And truly he just poured his blessings down,
That's amazing.
And I'm so much closer to him. Like, I kind of wonder, like, would I be as close to God now if I hadn't gone
those
through
trials.
that,
Yes.
And so I'm just so thankful for it now.
Thank you so much.
Anyway.
Thank you for doing this. I know this is not your favorite thing in the world, but we're so thankful. And I bet everybody that watches it will really get a blessing from what you've learned through all that God has brought you through. So thanks, Tor.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
Well, the time went by quick. The podcast is now ended. Spud and sweet potato enjoyed having you, but I